Once again, push for gun control collides with political reality. Washington hears how significant things don't get done in Washington even in a moment of crisis and opportunity. The president throws out a hodgepodge of ideas, thoroughly confusing both sides about what he really supports. Senate Republicans, grappling for an answer that responds to public clamor but doesn't alienate their conservative base, would prefer instead to focus on a small fix unlikely to satisfy many people even if it could overcome internal divisions. House Republicans say they will wait to see what the Senate does, though history has shown that can be a very long wait. Democrats push for a broad debate that Republicans want nothing to do with. That's where Washington stands now on the subject of new gun legislation after the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. Despite immense public pressure in part from students who escaped the attack, the outlook for any consequential action remains dim as the president and lawmakers diverge on how best to respond. President Trump upended the discussion on Wednesday during a bipartisan White House meeting with lawmakers. He seemed to side more with Democrats than Republicans on gun rights, chided fellow Republicans for fearing the National Rifle Association, and even suggested that guns should be summarily confiscated from suspects who raise red flags, forcing them to go to court to regain them. Such an approach toward gun rights runs counter to Republican dogma, as did other suggestions that the president made. But the meeting was very similar to an earlier White House session in which the president seemed to join with Democrats on divisive immigration policy only to later reverse course, leaving the parties at an impasse. Members of both parties expressed skepticism on Wednesday that the White House meeting would lead to a breakthrough. They even suggested that it could prove counterproductive by forcing the gun lobby to dig in its heels and by making Republican leaders unwilling to push ahead given the possibility of glaring divisions with Mr. Trump. Officials said the next issue on the Senate agenda was likely to be a rollback of banking regulations, not increased gun control. Mr. Trump's stream of consciousness display was just the latest wrinkle in the contentious struggle over gun safety. The most widely backed response to the Parkland shooting would provide new incentives for public agencies to submit information that could disqualify prospective gun buyers to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, an action most agree is modest at best. Even though they support it themselves, leading Democrats consider that proposal, sponsored by Senator John Cornyn of Texas, a no. Too Republican, to be woefully insufficient given the scope of the mass shootings. The Cornyn bill is kind of a fig leaf, said Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri, one of the Democrats up for re-election in a state that President Trump carried in 2016. To Democrats, the fact that the NRA is not opposed to the proposal is prima facie evidence that it falls short. They are demanding a more robust debate over a series of gun initiatives, notably what they call a universal background check system that would cover all gun transactions in the country. That plan is opposed by the gun lobby but was seemingly endorsed by Mr. Trump, putting him at odds not only with the gun advocacy group that strongly backed him, but with many congressional Republicans, as well. Senator Christopher S. Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut and an author, with Mr. Cornyn, of the more limited background check bill, equated taking up his own legislation without allowing consideration of alternatives to slamming the door in the face of all these kids who are demanding change. I think it is imperative that we rise to the moment, Mr. Murphy said. Mr. Trump told lawmakers they should use a broader bipartisan background check measure that failed in 2013 after the school shooting in Newtown, Conn, as the basis for a comprehensive measure that could take in many proposals, including the Cornyn Plan, new mental health provisions and added security for schools. He urged backers of a renewed ban on assault weapons to make their case to the authors of the legislation and said he would welcome the opportunity to enact one sweeping bill to combat mass shootings. But Congress has for years been unable to make even incremental headway on new gun buying limits, let alone the type of multifaceted plan called for by the president.
California actually has a
Democrats would like to persuade Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky and the majority leader, to allow votes on major gun control proposals. A plan that could throw the Senate into a full-blown showdown over competing initiatives. But Mr. McConnell is never one to rush into a fight that divides his own party if he can help it. While Mr. McConnell has been quiet about his intentions, Mr. Cornyn opened the door to that possibility of a wider debate provided it could get to passage of his bill at a minimum. We can set up a situation where they can vote on those amendments, he said. What I don't want to do is leave here this week and go back home to Texas and say we failed to do anything to try to address these tragedies. As lawmakers quibbled about how to proceed, some of the multiple proposals promoted by Mr. Trump were falling by the wayside. Republican lawmakers seem uninterested in plans to raise the age to buy all guns to 21. The idea of arming teachers was also getting a cold reception. Among plans circulating that could draw bipartisan support was a measure that would prevent those on federal no-fly lists from buying guns. Though that approach has met Republican resistance in the past. Hoping to skirt a divisive debate, Republicans preferred to focus on other remedies, like improving general school safety, while pointing to law enforcement failures surrounding the Parkland shooting. Democrats remained doubtful that Republicans would be willing to buck the NRA, particularly in an election year, but said it would be an imperative for legislative success. You can't solve this problem and please the NRA, said Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, the Democratic leader. Our Republican colleagues need to learn that. Given long-standing political conflict over the issue, many lawmakers in both parties anticipate the push for new laws will likely fall apart as so many others have in the aftermath of mass shootings. If that is the outcome, the determined high school students and their allies who have helped drive the debate to this point seem unlikely to let the issue go. Maybe the difference this time isn't that Congress will act, but it is that those pushing Congress will not allow lawmakers to so quickly move on after they don't.